Sambanan Dimlang, hello, it's Simply Sfiso, and welcome back to my podcast, Simply Do the Work. August slipped away in a moment of time, or whatever the hell Taylor Swift said in that song, but I think that's what she said, because I know I promised y'all I'd make sure to upload at least one podcast episode a month, and I don't know, the month of August just flew by. Like, I almost didn't realize the month was ending, and true story, I'd actually attempted to record this episode 2 weeks ago, but I was so tired. I was like, this is not working. Funny enough, the same thing happened with the last video I uploaded on YouTube. I even put a little clip where I was literally falling asleep while talking, falling asleep on camera. That's why I was like, cut the cameras, dead ass. Let's try this another day. But yeah, so I mean, at least the podcast, what I like about the podcast is it's a lot less admin in terms of I don't have to dress up. I don't have to make sure that my room is 100% clean, just to paint the setting for you guys. I'm recording this at 9 p.m. on a Monday. I'm dressed in my pajamas. After recording this, I'm literally going to have my chamomile tea and go to bed, and then we'll see when we edit this. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. Enough of my life story. Let's talk about my love story. As you can tell by the title of today's podcast episode, we'll be talking about dating in your 20s, but I'll be sharing some of my own insights and experiences, what I've learned, and hopefully that encourages you to do the work for yourself and examine, especially this is specifically people who are in their 20s. I feel like y'all will get where I'm coming from with this one, but I think, before we get into this episode, I do want to ask you guys, if you're not yet subscribed, do subscribe, follow the podcast, rate it on whatever platform you are listening to, and let me take a sip of water and then let us get into today's episode. Long-time listeners of the podcast know that I've had my fair share of unlucky and unfortunate experiences where it comes to dating that I've shared on this podcast, and some y'all will probably never hear about, because some L's, I believe, need to be taken in private. Okay, we need to have some shame. We need to bring back shame, because I can admit there are times where it's looking back, it's you know what? I was not acting out of my best self. I did not make the wisest decisions, but I think that's how we learn. I've experienced ghosting from someone I thought was potentially the one. I walked away from a potentially abusive relationship, and I had my self-esteem nearly broken down by a situationship, and more recently found myself entangled in a fast-paced love bombing mess. Now, my intention, when I'm sharing these stories, is never to be looking for sympathy, but rather to point out what I've been through and how I survived. And I'm hoping that someone listening from this can hear this and feel less alone. I mean, I'll be honest, it is quite cathartic to speak up about it. And besides the catharsis and the therapy sort of feeling that I get from it, I do also, my intention also, when I incorporate my personal stories into these episodes, into these when I handle these topics, is because I wanted to also come from a real place, right? I think sometimes you listen to a podcast or you're reading a book, it's okay, but you don't get it. You're just speaking from head knowledge, and I think research always changes, right? Findings always change, but I think lived experiences, I think those remain true even through the test of time. I don't know if that came out correctly, but I think y'all get what I'm trying to say. So let me just basically show you guys what happened with this love bombing fiasco. So there's this guy. We met online, as most of us do meet people these days. And we spoke for very short time, a couple of days, barely, we barely even spoke, because I even remember at the time, it was texting, I was also on call, so the conversation wasn't really flowing that much. But then he asked to call. He asked to, it was the middle of the night, can I come see you, come to your place? And I was no, 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 you're not gonna come to my place, it's the middle of the night, I'm going to sleep, okay? And so I think it was maybe Thursday. It was okay, well, there's a thing that's happening at my family's side on Saturday. Don't you want to come? And I was like, what is this thing? And the best way I can describe, I don't even know how to describe it in English, but it was like umcimbi. Like I like, I feel like that's the best way just to describe what I was being invited to. And I was like, okay, I was going through a lot in my head. I'm like, I don't really know this person. He's inviting me to this family gathering. I don't know these people. I was even like, okay, what will he even introduce me as? He was like, no, you're just gonna be going there as like my date or something. I can't remember what he said, but something to that effect. So I remember going like back and forth about it, but he was like really insistent. And I thought to myself, you know what? I'm not working this weekend. And he was even like, listen, it's cool. Like, you can just come and check it out. If it's not your vibe, you can leave, So I thought, okay, it's cool. I'm not doing anything anyways. Like, you know what? I'm always, bored. Whenever sometimes, sometimes like you plan to have a quiet weekend to yourself and then you just wish you went out. So I'm like, you know what? This will be my weekend to go out. So I got to the event and first and foremost, I think this was the first red flag. He started claiming me as his person, as if we've been in a relationship, like an established relationship, and had family members coming towards me saying, "Oh yeah, I know this person told us so much about you," and I'm just like, I don't want to be rude. I didn't want to, steal his thunder and things. So I went along with it. But I think this is where red flag number 2 needs to come in, which is how weirdly jealous he was. Like, if someone else was giving me a lot of attention, Mind you, this is the first time we're actually meeting face to face. And in hindsight, I don't know, girl, what was I thinking going there? But anyways, what then happened is, so because this is like his family thing, there's a point where he disappeared, right? No, he didn't disappear. Basically, like they called him and then they needed him to do something, which, I can imagine, if your family's hosting something, obviously you're not going to sit down and be with one person the whole time. So I was left with, his friends who were not nice people, really nice people, really welcoming, really kind, no complaints there, but I think it was kind of shitty, for lack of a better word, that, like, you invited me here and then you're just going to leave me alone. And so because of that, I ended up finding myself staying longer than originally planned, because I thought, okay, I can't leave yet. I barely even spoke to this person, And so eventually, right, the night, like the event was coming to an end. And then he was like, we can go someplace, more quiet. And I was like, okay, cool. That sounds like a vibe. Maybe finally, in my mind, I'm thinking maybe finally we can get a chance to finally get to talk, Lo and behold, we go to Groove. We basically go to some, I don't even want to call it a club, because it was the ghetto. Like, I'm sorry, the middle class privilege is jumping out, because I'm sorry, that's just, it's not the type of place that I would frequent, not the type of place that it's just, I'm not the target market, even just the type of music, the ad, it's not even just, it's just not for me. Like, I'm trying to be as nice as possible, but truth be told, it was the ghetto, okay? And at that point, I was over it. You could tell I was over it. Like, but it was like, we're gonna leave soon. And at this point, it's like, I'm kind of stuck. So I'm like, it is what it is. So after, eventually, right, we leave, because the other people we were with were like passed out drunk. So like, we left and then went to his friend's place, where we had supper, then we went to bed, and then the next morning, apparently, like, this gathering is continuing. So he's like, "You're coming through, right?" I'm like, I want to go home. And everyone looked at me like I'm crazy. Like, what do you mean you want to go home? Did we do something to you? It's like, no, I want to rest. Like, oh, you can rest here. And it's like, girl, I can't rest in this unfamiliar environment. Like, can I just go home? And it was so bad where it started becoming a bit of an argument. And his friends were like, no, listen, you I'm trying. The problem is now they were speaking in Zulu, and I'm trying to translate it to English. But they're basically saying like, listen, you can't just leave your man like that. And in my mind, I'm kind of thinking, am I missing something? Because literally a week ago, I didn't even know this man existed. Why must I compromise myself and my mental health and my sanity for him? So eventually, right, like I was like, screw being nice. Because initially what happened was like, okay, look, you can leave in like 30 minutes, right? I'm like, okay, cool. 30 minutes, chilling. It passes. I'm like, okay, I'm leaving now. I was like, no, stay for 15 minutes. That's where I lost it. I'm like, mm-mm. I know what you're doing. I believe the term was breadcrumbing. Like you're like, okay, you give me a little bit of breadcrumbs and I must just eat. I was like, no, I'm leaving. I am telling you now, I am leaving, which had him upset. I requested my Uber and I left because at least by now it's like daytime. So I was like, I felt safe enough to just leave. So then when I had left, one of the compromises I had come up with was like, look, I'm gonna go to my place, recharge for about 3-4 hours, and then I'll join you back at the family gathering thing. Now I'll be honest with y'all. When I got into that Uber, the plan was I am never going back. I should have listened to my gut. Like this is one of those times where I can admit that you know what, I misstepped, right? Because I went back to the family gathering. But we had agreed that I'm gonna leave at a certain time. I told him like I'm not gonna stay for long because it was this way. It's Sunday. Like I have work the next day. I need to recharge. And when it was time for me to leave again, and things in my heart, I was like, you know what, maybe I'll stay a little bit longer. Like, but I was like, I can't. I could feel like mentally and everything. I was just frazzled. I felt like I was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Like my nervous system was just so overstimulated because, mind you, since the day before, I've never had a chance to really be by myself and process everything that's happening. So at that point, I remember like stepping outside, calling a friend, and being like, "Girl, am I crazy? Please tell me, am I crazy? Because I feel like I'm being made into a villain for like wanting to leave here." My friend was like, "Listen, if you feel like you need to go, go." And I was like, "Okay, cool, I'm going." And he was not happy about that. At some point, he snatched my phone and cancelled my Uber, which at that point, my fight or flight response was like, "Oh," I was like, this is toxic. This isn't cute." So, but eventually, got in my Uber, and I left. Now, something I didn't mention is this is someone who didn't reveal to me initially that they actually weren't from around here. So I'm now based in Durban, right? And so he was actually only in Durban for that weekend. He's actually based in Joburg. And so that's why he felt such urgency for us to meet. And because even he said like when I said I'm leaving, he's like, I was finally gonna make time for us to finally talk. And in my mind, it's like, listen, I've spent God knows how many hours. Probably if you count it up, it could have been okay, not 24 hours, but like at least 12 hours with you, and I barely learned a thing about you. Like staying longer, how is that gonna change anything? But yeah, I left. Told my friends, and my friends were just like, "Girl, what were you doing?" It's like on one hand, it's like, what, we get it, but on the other hand, it's like, what were you doing? What were you thinking? But I'm just glad I made it out alive. I made it out on the other side. I'm thinking back to there's a tweet I've seen recently where sounds like a 2-week situationship will heal me, and all the comments and replies are like, "Girl, no, a 2-week situationship will ruin you. It will send you to therapy." And I feel like even though it was like less than a week, that is literally how I felt. Like I felt like, yo, this is tribe. Like I got back to my place just being so emotionally done and tired, and after over a couple of days, we had some conversations over the phone about what happened, and I expressed to him the immense discomfort that I felt, and he apologized, saying it wasn't his intention. He was just really excited to meet me, and he thought because the fact that he's leaving was to maximize the time together. And I was like, that's great and all, but I don't want to see you ever again. Like I was like, no, I think we need to cut off all communication. And yeah, that's that. Now, ooh, my mouth's getting a little dry, so I think I'm gonna take another sip of water and then wrap this episode up with some of the insights and overall reflections. Because I wasn't just telling you all my tea to be messy, okay? There is a method to the madness. So it's now been like 2 months since that whole fiasco happened. So I'm obviously, you know, I'm now in like a much better place. Like I've moved on from it. I feel like now that I'm like completely outside of that situation, I can see things clearly, and I can still have compassion for myself, and also understand how I got caught up in all of that mess. These days a lot of people want no strings attached. No strings attached, casual hookups and fun, and don't seem interested in building something serious. So when someone comes along and seems serious from the get go, it can feel refreshing. And I remember telling one of my friends this how because they were asking like, why did I agree to these crazy like I left out a lot of details, but like the craziness of the situation. It was like because it felt refreshing. Like here's someone who I didn't mention like the part of the jealousy, right? He immediately insisted on us just being monogamous, like and one of my friends was even saying, what the danger is that this person never courted you, just claimed you immediately, but it seemed, I thought, finally someone who knows what they want, someone who's not beating about the bush. But it's also quite overwhelming spending a lot of time with someone like that in their space, so your better judgment might fail in that moment. I think that's why I've seen a lot of like dating columns, and when people talk about advice for first dates, they always recommend keep it casual, keep it short. I do think because when you just get really enmeshed with someone very quickly, you can't see things clearly. And I think had I listened to my gut from the get-go, this whole thing could have been avoided. But then I also think it was also necessary, because I think I learned a lot from it about myself. Because besides just the messiness of the situation, one of the reasons why I did say we need to cut off communication is I very much realized that me and this person are not compatible. Despite the fact that yes, there is a spark, there is a bit of chemistry, we're just not compatible, because I was able to see certain aspects of his personality and the life that he lives. I'm like, this does not gel with mine. Like, I don't see how I could, or how life with this person could even work out. So thanks to some amazing friends, I was able to recognize that and leave. And here are just some of the lessons I learned. First of all, when it comes to dating, I think we need to take it slow. I think, as tempting as it can be to want to spend every waking minute with someone, taking it slow is the way to go. I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but because, I think you can still learn about someone, and it doesn't have to be this emotionally taxing and draining experience. I also think if it's truly meant to be, it'll be. Like, there's no need to force things, force connection, and I think like even just outside of this specific situation, I think even prior situationships, like things were so rushed. I think the dating where actually we took a bit of time, when it ended, it didn't feel as dramatic as these very fast-paced situationships, which is just something which I've learned, and even I've seen other people talking about that. Taking it slow is really the way to go. The second thing, which I already mentioned, is that chemistry does not equal compatibility. I think we've all met people who initially there's like a spark, but then, like last year, I remember it's about a year ago from now, where did I talk about this on the podcast? I don't ever talk about this specific person on the podcast, but anyways, no, I didn't, because I wasn't doing the podcast. But initially, right, our first date, there was that chemistry, but it was just, there were some things which kind of bothered me, but like, what, let me give this person a chance. But like, as we started talking, I just started to realize that they are just fundamental things that we just do not agree on, like values and the way we see life, and I feel like, yes, things, you're not going to meet someone who is exactly like you and probably understands you exactly like from the get-go. Obviously there's certain things that you can work through, but there's just some fundamentals like morals, ethics that just are just non-negotiable. Like if you guys can't agree on that, it's not gonna work. It's not gonna work. I think also following your gut and intuition. I think there's so many. I feel like we've all had those moments. Like even like as I was recounting the story, like I'm sure you guys heard me mention them. There were literally so many points of like return, points where I could be like, you know what, stop, I'm leaving, But I kept like the alarm bells were ringing, but I just put them on mute. I just kept snoozing them. And I think another thing which I've learned from dating is it's important to listen to your friends. I think we've all had experiences. When you're dating someone, and when you talk to your friends about that person, you omit certain details because you know that if you tell your friend what's actually going on, they're gonna tell you that you need to leave. And I think it's in those moments where we need to actually be honest with our friends, be like, friend, this is what's happening, because sometimes I've had experiences where the person that I was dating was like, what your problem is? Your problem is you listen too much to your friends. You let your friends influence you too much. But sometimes I think, what? For the most part, friends mean well, for them. And usually, when that situation falls apart, who is left there to pick up the pieces? Your friends. And so I think it is important that we also be friends to ourselves. Like think about like how would you feel if your friend, like think about whatever situation you're in, you're dating, and your friend were to tell you that they're going through whatever you're going through. What would you say to them? Like I think we should also be our own best friends. The next point I have here is maybe consider taking a break from dating apps. Like after this little, because another thing that he did, which I didn't even realize, like he literally, cause at some point like he asked for my phone, and then he literally deleted the dating app that we met on from my phone. Which I remember telling one of my friends, was like that's crazy, but maybe he's onto something. Maybe you need to like be off the apps. And so I didn't reinstall it after that. I was like, you know what, maybe I don't need the apps, and maybe I just need to focus on myself and other connections, because I'll be honest, I feel like also being on the dating apps, it does something to your psyche. It does something to how, not only how you view yourself, but how you view others. Because it's like you no longer see people as human beings, but they just become, it's like, because the first thing you see on a dating app, usually it's like whatever pictures the person has on their profile. Whether it's like some people, will intentionally post thirst traps, or you'll see a beautiful face, but like that's the first thing, and then everything else is secondary. And usually, and I've also been caught up in this. It's like like with Tinder, for example, you want to get as many matches as possible, but then once you get those matches, you don't even talk to those people, right? Excuse me. Oh, like I know I've done this when I'm bored. Just strike up conversation with people, even though I know in my heart of hearts I have no intention of meeting them, which I think about it, like that's actually kind of like a cool thing, because this person they're talking to you, they're building up this expectation that you're gonna meet, and when suddenly it's time to meet, it's like, what, never mind. And I think also just recognizing that on the apps I was just not finding what I was looking for. Like a lot of people these days, at least let me say, in the era I'm at, because maybe that's also a factor. They just want NSA, they just want hookups, they just want something casual, which if that's what you're looking for, no shame to you, right? It's just not something that I'm looking for at the moment. And I think even just I'm getting a little bit emotional thinking about it, because I think also just in terms of my own worth and self-esteem, it's like I was starting to question, like, is there anyone who actually wants to get to know me as a person, beyond just having a moment with my body, because it's kind of weird. And I mean, this is me like going on a tangent about it. It's because it's like on one end sometimes I feel like really shitty about my body. I feel like my body is not good looking, it's not ideal or anything, Meanwhile, I know that there are people who pursue me purely because of my body. I know there are people who are envious of my body. Like, we can probably have a whole other podcast episode on like body image and all of that. That's not what we're doing today. But yeah, but I mean, that's another reason why I just decided, I need to take a break from these dating apps, because it was just messing up with my psyche, and I already touched on the next aspect, which is like, building a life for yourself. I'm currently now, by doing the podcast and YouTube, like literally, I decided, the energy that I was investing or putting towards dating apps, I'm now shifting the energy towards myself and doing things that make me happy. I realized that by not being on these apps, I actually do have more time to record podcasts, to record YouTube videos. Like, even though, right, it's been a month since I put out a podcast episode, I've put out like 4 YouTube videos in that time frame, which previously would have been almost unthinkable, And so it's just, besides that, also like me going to church, that's also me trying to going back to church is me trying to build a life for me. And it's like, whoever I'm going to be dating next, or whoever comes into my life, you're going to have to compete with the life that I've built for myself. Or you need to be someone who I can see slotting into the life I've built for myself. I want to be full, I'm not searching for my other half, because I'm a full and complete person, And lastly, work on the other relationships in your life. That's the advice I have, and something which I'm actively trying to do. By that I mean, what about look at your family? Are things, like I'm not saying, like I feel like, without going into too much detail, right? I feel like my parents and I, our relationship, it's okay, but I do feel like it could be better. And so, like, even during the long weekend, like me going home, that was an effort also of me of trying to sort of better my relationship with my parents, And actually, I did have a bit of a heartfelt conversation with my mom, which it's not like we didn't go into anything deep, but just like the fact that, I had that time just sit down and have a conversation with my mom, which is something I haven't done in a long time because of like the obvious distance. And I'm also planning to, next time I see my parents, like there are conversations that I do want to have with them in order to better that relationship. Also nurturing friendships, right? There are friends who, I'm trying, just to, check up on them. I mean, I can do a whole lot better at replying to people's texts. Lord knows I can do better at replying to people's texts, but I'm trying, and I'm also, I think, besides just romantic relationship, I think we need to also nurture the other relationships that we have. I'm thinking like relationships with my coworkers. Like I do try to check in on them if they're okay. Look, I do try to give them words of encouragement if I see that, hey, someone's not looking like they're having a good day or whatever. I try to be friendly. I try, even if I'm feeling down, I do try to be like a positive light to someone else. But yeah, I mean, overall, dating is supposed to be fun, especially in the beginning. I know I mostly speak about the bad because the bad tends to be a lot more entertaining and juicy, and we can learn from the bad. But I've had good times dating. I don't want to deny that, and cherish moments. And even when things don't work out, to my 20-somethings who are going through it, I hope this episode helps put things in perspective and take whatever I said with a grain of salt. If this is like a topic that you are more like, you want to like deep dive into it, I highly recommend the podcast Psychology of Your 20s. It like I binged a couple of their episodes, especially ones about dating recently, and that's what also really inspired this episode. So yeah, thank you so much for listening. I hope the voice is still coming out okay, because I can feel that. Ooh, child, I'm tired. Like, I'm not used to speaking for so long. I think especially because I'm recording this late at night, so it's just like a lot for me. But like, thank you guys for tuning in, and yeah, do stay tuned on my YouTube channel. As I mentioned, the next video that will be coming up will be on the Cat's Eye documentary on Netflix. So God willing, that video should be out a week from now. And then, yeah, next month, I'll be back with another podcast episode. So thank you so much. Until next time, I love you guys so much. Kisses, kisses, kisses. Bye.